Right, welcome to our next panel, which is the Computational Law Update. I'm Harry Surden. I'm a law professor at the University of Colorado in Boulder, and I'm also a affiliated faculty here at the Stanford CodeX Center. We have a really distinguished panel here discussing computational law, and in the interest of time, I'm only going to briefly introduce them. Starting with my left, I have Bart Verhey from the University of Groningen. Is that close enough? Next, I have Nicole Shanahan, who's not only a current CodeX fellow, but also the founder of Clear Access IP. Next, we have Guido Governatore from Data 61 Cicero from Australia. Next, we have Ron Stout, who's a professor at the Chicago-Kent College of Law. And last but not least, we have Leila Benjamin Namali from the founder of Startup Documents. So this use of computational law refers to one particular approach to legal automation, and that is a rules-based approach to legal automation. In this way, you represent the law and the meaning behind the law in ways that a computer can understand, and the computer comes to legal conclusions about outcomes using deductive reasoning. And that this version of computational law is becoming more important these days because we're seeing a lot more law embedded in technological systems. So personal research area of mine is self-driving cars, and increasingly we're seeing self-driving cars embed law, the traffic laws, in technological systems because the computers that run the cars need to obey the traffic laws. So this broader approach would involve systems that use machine learning, for example, to do document review and predictive coding, and more or less any sort of technological approach in which you apply computation to streamline some legal process or automate some legal process. So let me just frame those two different views of computational law before I throw it out to the panel. One, the deductive kind of expert system, TurboTax view. Another, the broader, anytime we're applying computation to a legal process or the law in order to improve its efficiency. Question out to Nicole. So what do you mean by the phrase computational law? And under your definition, how do you expect, or are you seeing it transforming law or legal practice generally?
Thanks. So I think the first thing I should say being at CodeX is that the logical representation of the law is incredibly helpful as a way to learn because as lawyers and law students, we're trained to write outlines. And that is it is a logical representation, and that can convert into code, an express language, an express computational language of the law. But in my, in practice with Clear Access IP and with the CodeX Smart Prosecution Project, I've found that the best approach is actually a hybrid approach. That logic plays a very important role, but there's also other computational tools that are necessary. And one example is, data mining. So data mining PDF documents is where, I keep running into problems. For example, incident reports produced by police departments. They are in incredibly non-standard image formats, and getting information out and creating a database out of them takes forever. So even if I had really great logical tools to analyze and express, law using this data, the time it takes to get there it just takes so long and it's so painful. I would say that computational law requires us to really think broadly about what the problems are and think broadly about the approaches. But for patent examination procedure, MPEP. Okay, a few people. It is a almost 2,000 page manual, just on about 1,000 pages relate to substantive procedure. Just procedure. This is not any of the, there's no case law in this. It's just procedure. So how do you take something like that and logically represent it? It is a massive task, but it's doable. My startup, ClearAccess IP, has attempted to do that just with docketing rules. But if you were to do it with everything else, it would probably be roughly, I don't know, I'm trying to count it up, but within the hundreds of lines of code. It's not that much, I think, if it's written well. Maybe close to 500, but it reduces it down quite a bit. And then what you have then is something that can be applied against a data set over and over and over again and perform certain tasks like compiling files. Sending out notices that something is due to the patent office, and it can be used not just in one silo of the patent ecosystem, but it can be used across many, from patent prosecution to litigation to transactions. So I think once you understand how to represent it, you can apply it in many practice areas.
Yeah, Nicole, that's a really good point. I think it illustrates the fact that not everything in law is easily represented in a formal, unambiguous way that can be represented computationally, but some things are. And honing in on those areas, which are sort of the more formal, more rules-based systems, or like you just represented, are real areas of hope for computational law. So a really rapidly rising topic in computational law is smart contracts or computable contracts. And if you look out there on the web, there are projects like Ethereum and R3, which are using blockchain technology to solve certain small aspects, computable aspects in the contracting context. Stanford has its own computable contracting initiative. So let me just throw this out to the panel. What do you think of this computable contracts, blockchain type developments? Where do we see these smart or computable contracts heading? Any reactions?
So smart contracts, computable contracts, very different. And I think, like, if there's one thing I'd like to leave this panel is please know the difference between these two areas. Smart contracts, generally speaking, relate to contracts executed oftentimes on the blockchain, or Ethereum is also a smart contracts platform. And then computable contracts is what Harry just mentioned, and that technology has been around a little bit longer, and I think in the legal tech community is the one we associate with more. One thing about smart contracts, though, and the biggest development that I think has happened here is Ethereum. Ethereum is a blockchain tool. All blockchain is a ledger. It's a ledger of hashes of things that have happened on the ledger. Ethereum allows you to embed information into that ledger. So it's not just a transaction of Bitcoin, but it can be a transaction of something containing many terms potentially. And that's what makes smart contracts in that context really attractive from a legal tech standpoint. One that comes to mind is this company called DocAssemble. It's a startup. And what he did was he tried to create a declarative language. And he even published the library open source. And he said it's really simple. Like, any lawyer can, access this library and put in, their key terms and then deploy the code, and then you get this document. And Eddie Hartman was in the room and he was like, I think you're way overestimating, the technical abilities of most attorneys. But what I think is special about this is that you are seeing kind of these smaller efforts that I think are doing big things in the computable contract space. And, figuring out what the language is a big first step.